You're watching Global Watch on CGTN. Now we turn to diplomacy. China has expressed a strong dissatisfaction with and opposition to a joint statement released by the United States and Japan. The Chinese Foreign Ministry says it interferes in China's internal affairs and seriously violates the basic norms in international relations. China says both Taiwan and the Diaoyu Islands are Chinese territory, and Hong Kong and Xinjiang-related issues are China's internal affairs. It also says China has indisputable sovereignty over islands in the South China Sea and waters around them. The Chinese Foreign Ministry urged the US and Japan to immediately stop meddling in China's internal affairs and harming China's interests. It says China would take all necessary measures to firmly safeguard its national sovereignty, security and development interests. The joint statement was released after talks between the Japanese Prime Minister and the US President and touched on China's policies in Hong Kong, Xinjiang and Taiwan. Now, for more insight into that, we're joined in the studio by Mr. Yang Xiyu from the China Institute of International Studies. So, Mr. Yang, looking at that joint statement from the United States and Japan this time, would you say the US has been trying to make Japan a pivot country in forming a new Indo-Pacific alliance against China?
Well, I think balancing China or containing China has been U.S. strategic goal for decades. However, with the declining of American powers, they need more allied states to join in, and Japan has firstly selected by U.S. as a core partner to join in the containing China strategy. So this joint statement really reflected the purpose of U.S. strategy against China. And unfortunately, Japan, followed by the United States, not based on their own national interests, but following American national interests and American geopolitical politics interests. So that really opened a really uncertain and risky future for the region as well for Japan.
And talking about national interest, what about Japan's national interest? We know China has been Japan's largest trading partner for over a decade. Would you say Japan has been trying to create this two-track reality? On one side, it's maintaining robust economic relationship with China. On the other hand, as you just mentioned, it follows geopolitical strategy made by the US. Is that feasible in the near future?
It's a very key question. Actually, what you have mentioned for Japan put very sharp contradiction for Japan's national interests. On one hand, Japan really wants to rely on U.S. Because of the security and the wide range of issues. Especially, they want to re-rising. Japan wants to be re-rising, and relying on the United States is a shortcut for many Japanese politicians. But on the other hand, in terms of real national interests, a good, stable, positive, cooperative Japan-China relation really fit Japanese core interests. So on one hand, they join in U.S. to enter China, but on the other hand, they seek for their own interests to stabilize Japan-China relation. So such a contradictory means make Japan as a crossroads, not only for the region, but also for their own country's future. But in short, if Japan not commit to the four political documents made by Japan, the Chinese government, and keep doing something damage the principles set by the four political documents, finally, their behavior, their actions will damage their own national interests. Only when they return to the four political documents and seek for the cooperation with China, then the bilateral relation can develop smoothly, and the Japanese national interests can be guaranteed by such a positive move.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yang Xiyu with the China Institute of International Studies. Still on Japan, the country's nuclear wastewater decision has drawn wide attention around the world. The DPRK calls it a threat to human existence. Meanwhile, people in Fukushima in Japan and South Korea have also expressed serious concern.
I definitely do not want to be in a sea contaminated by radiation, so I'm totally against the government's decision. I don't think anyone will want to surf in contaminated waters in Fukushima.
If we can't sell fish here, our business will be unsustainable and a bit difficult. We are concerned that we may have to close our business.
I'm worried. It is about what we eat. We shouldn't be eating anything contaminated which can harm our health. The government should stop them from contaminating the sea. If the ocean gets polluted, I will be too scared to eat fish.
China and some of its East Asian neighbors have condemned Japan's decision, but the US has praised that move. Cui Huiyao gets expert takes on what's driving Tokyo's actions and offers his own view.
Japan has decided to dump 1.3 million tons of nuclear water into the Pacific Ocean. Its neighbors, China and South Korea, have strongly opposed the decision. China has called it extremely irresponsible. Not only will it change our planet, generations of people are going to live with the consequences of a single rash decision. But you know what? One country has notably expressed its support for Japan's planned actions. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has tweeted, "We thank Japan for its transparent efforts, and we look forward to the government of Japan's continued coordination with the International Atomic Energy Agency." Transparent? I don't think so. It has been 10 years since Japan's worst ever nuclear disaster. Huge levels of toxic water have been generated because of the crisis. TEPCO, Japan's biggest power company, has been in charge of the nuclear water disposal. But to date, it has been anything except transparent. In 2013, the energy company withheld the fact that tainted water was leaking into the ocean because it did not want to worry the public. In 2018, TEPCO admitted failure in filtering all dangerous materials out of the water, even though it had been saying for years they had been removed. Now it claims dumping the contaminated water into the ocean is the best possible solution, with little information provided about why other options are not being considered.
For an important decision like this, Japan should have consulted its neighboring countries because we're only a couple of hundred miles away by sea, meaning we'll be the first to suffer from the release. But Japan hasn't done this. This is why the international community is concerned and angry about how it's being handled.
So given all this, why is the US saying otherwise? One reason is Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga, who's currently on a visit to the United States. That makes him the first foreign leader to visit the country since Joe Biden took office.
Japan is very significant to Biden's Indo-Pacific strategy, which aims to counter China's rise. The Biden administration is putting that before its own people's interest. Blinken's statement is trying to turn a potential environmental crisis into something political. The message is the U.S. is on the side of its ally.
Well, the U.S. may think this contaminated water is not going to affect America itself. But let's not forget the power of ocean currents. It may only take 2 to 3 years for the toxic water to make its way to Californian shores. So what should be the right approach?
A thorough scientific study should be conducted jointly by the world. That would have to take between 5 to 10 years. For example, by putting marine organisms into a pool, some of the water could then be released into it. Observations of how this affects cells, organ structure, and the immune system would take place over time.
With stakes this high, Japan should not make decisions based on its interests alone. The U.S. should also put aside geopolitics and its hypocrisy. Because like COVID-19, this is about science and survival of mankind, not politics. We, as a collective world, need to speak up and protect ourselves and our future.